Good evening, everybody. Good evening and welcome. Welcome to the Governor's Water Quality Town Hall for Southwest Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Anna Henderson, Water Advisor to Governor Mark Dayton and Lieutenant Governor Tina Smith. We're here tonight to listen and learn from all of you about the water quality improvements you want to see and to hear how we can increase the pace of progress in this region. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you didn't see, the bathrooms are just out there where you registered. There's cookies and coffee over here. On your table, there's a little table tent that has information about a website we're going to be using to collect the fruits of all of your discussions and the event passcode for that website, which is Marshall. Also on your table, there are these water drops, and they're out by the registration as well on the bulletin board. And these are a chance for you to tell us some things that you love about Minnesota's water, if there's anything you're concerned about, and what you think is going to help. So it's basically just another place for you to share your thoughts and ideas tonight. This website, The Pigeonhole, I just want to make sure nobody gets worried about technology. Only one person at a table is going to be entering things, so not everybody here is going to have to use it. I'll go through instructions later on, and if at any point anyone has any problems, you just raise your hand and we have staff who will come over and help you out. We also have a couple of laptops for anybody who would rather use a laptop than a phone, so don't worry about it. And if you would all now please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would now like to introduce the Southwest Minnesota State University President, Dr. Connie J. Gores, who will be giving a few remarks and introducing the governor. Thank you so much for having us here tonight.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to SMSU. I'm very, very pleased to see everyone here tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's wonderful to invite everybody back to campus. It's been a busy day on campus. Earlier today, I was not dressed like this because we had move-in day. And what we do, faculty and staff and community members all gather together. In fact, I think we had 500 volunteers in t-shirts, blue jeans, tote boxes, boxes, futons, refrigerators, all these sorts of things, helping students move into their residence halls. So it's been a good day, and it's a good day to have this town hall here as well. I'm really pleased that Governor Dayton's here today. He especially has been supportive of education, and in our case, especially higher education. So we're really pleased to have him on campus. We all know that water is an important issue in southern Minnesota, and we're proud of the fact that for the past 15 years, A couple of our faculty members, one who's actually here tonight, has involved our undergraduate students and other area school students in an annual research project where they monitor the quality of the Redwood River water. And in fact, I understand that Governor Dayton might be back in town in October for the pheasant opener, and we are arranging for him to see this river monitoring in action, so he'll get a chance to see the good work that our faculty member, Dr. Deaver, and her students do with the river. We're also pleased to host this important conversation this evening because we believe that the university is a marketplace of ideas, the perfect place to host a town hall to discuss topics in a civil, respectful manner. So we're glad you're here this evening, and now please join me in welcoming the Honorable Mark Dayton, Governor of the great state of Minnesota.
Thank you. Well, we can be unanimous that it's the great state of Minnesota. The honorable part is sort of subject to opinion, but thank you all for being here tonight. This is really a tremendous turnout and tremendous response. We've had 3 of these. Now we had the second last night in Mankato, dodging tornado warnings, which fortunately escaped this area here, and we had one in Rochester. So they've been very well attended, and it just demonstrates high degree of interest in what this is all about, which is appropriate given our situation. We have some distinguished legislators who are here. I thank them very much for coming. We have Senator Weber, Senator Dames sitting over there together. We got to split them up, you see, so they can't side by side. We have Representative Swedinsky. There, all right. He's there all together. Congressman Colin Peterson. Staff, okay, very good. And I want to put in a plug, as the president did, for the pheasant hunting opener, October 13th and 14th here in Marshall. Marshall hosted our second one in 2012 and really set the platinum standard for everyone else to follow. So I'm looking forward to coming back. I am a charter member of Pheasants Forever, and to do my part, I have not shot a single pheasant in all of the pheasant openers. But hopefully this year something will change. I also want to point out we have brought, really a high level of commissioners here and agency heads to really, have a dialogue with you and be available. So I want to introduce Commissioner Ed Ellinger, Department of Health, Commissioner Dave Frederickson, Department of Agriculture, John Jaski, the Executive Director of Bowser, and Tom Landwehr, Commissioner of DNR. And so, this area of the state was really the origin of my awareness about the state of water quality in Minnesota. I read the first draft of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency report. I think it came out in early 2015, so it's probably about 2014. I saw a draft and focused on the contamination of water supplies here in southwestern Minnesota, and I was frankly shocked. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, land of sky blue waters, and I guess like most Minnesotans just assume that, the good Lord gave us this incredible blessing of water quality and water supply, and I just assumed it was guaranteed forever. Well, nothing is unless we preserve it so. And so that's what really launched this whole effort. So those of you who consider me to be the buffer bully, you can say you started me off the wrong track here or whatever. But, this is so vitally important. And these meetings are not about pointing fingers or casting blame. It's saying, here we are. We all have a stake in a good quality water supply for all the activities that go on, and how can we all, working together, improve that water quality? Because if we don't, it's going to continue to get only worse, and it's going to cost untold millions, even billions of dollars over the decades in terms of water treatment facilities and operations that, fall heavily on the small towns and communities in greater Minnesota. I want to thank the legislators for supporting the funding that we recommended to help provide those water treatment either upgrades or new installments for the sake of clean water. But we've also got to work on the other end, which is the source of all of this. And again, it's all of us. City folks, and the way MnDOT plows its highways with water and salt and the like, and it's everybody. And so we each have a shared responsibility to see what we can do all together to improve. I see a young man sitting in the very back there. I'm really impressed that you show up. These meetings are for you. And I'm really amazed that you would come, because I tried to get my sons, Eric and Andrew, to come one time. I was giving a speech, and my son, Andrew, is like 6 years old, and it looks about, I don't know how old you are. 9. Well, my son, Eric, was 9. So I had them promise they were going to come watch me, listen to me speak, and I came down, it was a Saturday morning, they were watching cartoons, of course. And they said, well, we don't want to go. And I said, come on, you promised. And my son Andrew, who was then 6 years old, looked at me very seriously, said, Dad, I really don't want to go. I heard you speak once, and Dad, you were really boring. So I'm going to get off the stage here, because you hopefully didn't come to listen to me. Hopefully you came to listen to one another, and I'm here to listen to all of you. And thank you very much for your participation, and let's turn this thing around. Thank you.
I'm so pleased to now introduce Kylene Olson, the Executive Director of the Chippewa River Watershed Project. The project is a joint powers entity of the 7 counties in the Chippewa River, and its tributaries run through before entering the Minnesota River at Montevideo. She has coordinated the project since 1998, and in that time developed strong partnerships with counties, soil water conservation districts, nonprofits, water planners, and other state and federal agencies who are all working towards a cleaner Minnesota River.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm very excited to be here, and so happy the governor is holding these forums across the state, because water in Minnesota is very, very important. I know they had a slide up earlier showing water in Minnesota, and Minnesota really is a headwater state. All our water flows out, and we kind of feed the rest of the continent with water, so we are very important in the water world. As Anna said, I'm the Executive Director of the Chippewa River Watershed Project, and our watershed is 1.3 million acres. It's one of the largest tributaries of the Minnesota River and covers parts of 7 counties. And we are a grant-based organization, so everything we do comes from grants that our office writes and are awarded for every aspect of our work. And our project began almost 20 years ago, and since that time, we've brought over $15 million to the Chippewa River watershed in the form of low-interest loan dollars that homeowners use for septic system upgrades, and in the form of grants. And those grants are used for our staff, for education, for our monitoring program, and for cost shares and incentives to homeowners and landowners to implement best management practices on the landscape that they are in charge of. The Chippewa River watershed, we're also the most monitored watershed in the state of Minnesota. Now, my staff was saying, do you really want to say that? And I said, yes, because if any of you go to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's website and pull up the EDA data link that everybody that monitors water should be inputting their data into, we have definitely the most data in there of any watershed in the state of Minnesota, perhaps in the country. And that's thanks to having an incredible watershed scientist work for us for many years and taking that program to monitoring many different avenues of the water in our watershed, either on farm fields to our tributaries to transects of all our tributaries. We have an amazing program. So if anybody's interested in more information about water quality, you can talk to me afterwards, because I could talk for the next half hour on that. And I have a limited amount of time. So we've partnered with all the state, local, and federal agencies over the past 20 years to install best management practices. We've installed, through just our project alone, over 750 on the landscape in the watershed. Now that doesn't include what our partners like the Soil and Water Conservation Districts and Natural Resource Conservation Service have installed. However, given all that good work that we've done over 20 years and our partners who have been around some of those SWCDs for 60 years, brings me to this slide. So this is, the slide on the screens here is one of the tributaries of the Chippewa River. It's called Shakopee Creek. It's also known as Judicial Ditch 18. It was channelized in the 1950s as part of the federal watershed pilot program, and there's 198,000 acres of our 1.3 million that drain to Shakopee Creek. But what I want to point out to you on this slide, I want you to look at it closely. This is on, and my pointer. Okay, I'm going to point at this line I want you all to look at. Over here too. That line right there. You can see the trees reflected here. That line is a sediment plume. That's a sediment plume of Shakopee Creek entering the Chippewa River. The darker water, which is actually clearer water, is the Chippewa River. And that's only 198,000 acres that drain close to the bottom of Chippewa River. So with all of those practices we've put in place, we still have problems, and we have water quality on this stream and flow measurements that go back to 1998. So we have a lot of good science on this stream and its watershed. So what does this tell us? It tells me that the behaviors of all of us need to change. We need to change our attitudes, and we need to change our behaviors to really improve the water quality in Minnesota. All of those BMPs, or best management practices, that we have implemented, and we still have this kind of thing going on. So we're impaired for turbidity or sediment, we're impaired for bacteria, and excessive nutrients. We just finished our watershed restoration and protection strategy and added over 40 new impairments in our watershed. You know, the impairments are each state is required to report to the EPA every 2 years of their impaired waters and added to the 303D impaired list. So this tells us the traditional BMPs that we've all been doing are not working because we still have this kind of a problem. And that it's everybody's responsibility. You know, people ask me, have you got that river cleaned up yet? Well, you know, I'm not cleaning up the river. It's up to you. It's up to every single one of you to do your part, whether you live in town, whether you live on a farm. You know, there's things all of us can do, and we all need to change our behavior or it's not going to happen. I've seen this for too long. So in the 1.3 million acres we have, approximately 980,000 are farmland. And in all of that, so I want to show you my next slide here. Oh. All of these plans, the Minnesota Nutrient Reduction Strategy, the Sediment Reduction Strategy, the Chippewa River RAPS, the Chippewa TMDL, they all have recommendations in there for how to improve water quality. And the one thing they all have in common is cover crops or perennials on the landscape. And that will also improve our soil health, with soil health being the biggest player that we can do to help improve water quality. Healthy soil stays on the landscape. We won't get that sediment plume if we have healthy soil. So I believe it all starts with that. And we are working on that in the Chippewa. The one bright spot we do have going is our Chippewa 10% project, working on changing 10% of our landscape to perennials. And this last slide is just 2 weeks ago, we had a workshop at a farmer's place near DeGraff, Minnesota, to talk about soil health, teach them about soil health, and show them the results of what healthy soil looks like. So, and you know, even last year when we had one of these workshops, we maybe had 10 farmers there. This time we had 30. So the interest is growing, and that's one thing we need to do. Our projects provides the tools, and those tools are education, science, monitoring, and cost share money for everybody, whether you're rural or urban. So thank you very much. Okay, yeah, I did have one more thing I wanted to talk about. Sure. Last year at the Governor's Water Summit in St. Paul, he mentioned all of us should start to develop a water ethic. So 2 nonprofit organizations at our project, that would be CURE, Clean Up the River Environment, and Land Stewardship Project, held some forums for people to discuss developing a water ethic. So there's some posters going around the room. We did send one to the governor, but at these forums, we had an artist who recorded the meetings in artwork in form, and it talks about the amount of nitrogen going down the Chippewa River. Every year we have $1 million worth of nitrogen going down our river. We have 7 20-ton dump trucks every day of the monitoring season dumping soil into the river. So we had a lot of discussion and a lot of on developing a water ethic. So I urge you to go around and look at these posters when you when we start moving around the room. So thank you.
If anyone's looking for chairs, there's a couple chairs here and over on this side of the room and back there. So feel free to just move and find places to sit. I'm so pleased to now introduce Chairman Kevin Jensfold of the Upper Sioux community. Chairman Jensfold has served in his position since 2005. Prior to his election to the Tribal Council, he worked for the Tribal Gaming Enterprises for 11 years. Chairman Jensfold has lived the majority of his life at the Upper Sioux community and resides on the reservation. He is active with the community youth, land, and cultural issues in all governmental functions.
Hamitaki. I want to apologize, but first I want to thank Governor Dayton for allowing me to be here tonight. But I want to apologize to all of you because I'm uncomfortable on the stage or behind a podium. To me, there's too many barriers between us, and there's enough of those that we create throughout our lives. So I just beg your indulgence for me to be standing here. On my way here, I live 30 miles just north of here on Highway 23. I was given a time limit of 5 minutes. I'm a very slow thinker and an even slower talker. I've been told that. But I wondered what message I could bring. And what brought me here to this place tonight was a wastewater project that our tribal government had engaged in. It's called a membrane biologic reactor, MBR for short. I was at Morris, and a gentleman was there on the stage, and he said Detroit Lakes, I believe, is the municipality that is undertaking that project, and he said that was the first in the state of Minnesota to do so. And that is true, but there are 2 tribal nations within the borders of Minnesota that have had functioning MBR systems for, ours is going on 6 years, and the Dayton and Shakopee. Probably 10 years or better. Which reminds me when, in my mother's sacred language, Minnesota, one of the most sacred languages here, this is our homeland. The translation, one of those, is the land or the water that reflects the heavens. And I wanted to say to Governor Dayton, when he states the land of sky blue waters, you can understand how that came to be. This young lady who spoke before mentioned Shakopee Creek. That also is a Dakota word, and that means 6 in our language. But what caught my attention there was she references a certain ditch somehow miraculously becomes a creek. The same thing is evident in Yellow Medicine County, again, named after our people. But that we have County Ditch 5 or 9, I believe, and it reaches this magical point and it becomes Hazel Creek. But if, in my own simple way of thinking, you know, in a ditch, nobody really cares. We clean up our ditches, we adopt our highways. Everything in there gets thrown in there for somebody else to take care of. We need to change that philosophy of thinking of these waterways as something that just for somebody downstream to worry about. Our MBR, we had to seek a permit to discharge to the river, the Minnesota River, one of the most polluted rivers in the United States of America. Arnie Carlson acknowledged that in 1991 and said he was going to do his best to clean up the rivers in 25 years. I was a 27-year-old optimist and I thought he would get it done, but today we still have a long ways to go. But I'm more of an optimist than a pessimist, and I think great things can be done, especially with governors, you know, ambition to make it a reality. But we treat approximately 80,000 gallons of effluent a day. We discharge sterile water into the river each and every day. Our permit is 3 times more restrictive when we agreed to those terms with the United States of America, the EPA, than any that the MPCA issues. Nowadays it's changing. Those limits are becoming more restrictive, hence Detroit Lake's issue and how they have to address their needs. But the reality is this: it cost us $5.8 million when we could have created a system for less than half of that. But we chose to do the right thing, because the reality is each and every one of us in here has a family member that we would do anything, we would lay our life on the line so that they could live. Without the water and the necessary life that it brings to the people, you know, our world is diminished. So look towards our future generations and say, what are you willing to do? And what are you willing to give to make that a reality? I know it's expensive, but how precious and priceless are our children and our future? And my 5 minutes is up, and I thank you, Governor Dayton, to Senator Dames and Representative Swedzinski. They represent our people. They've been there. I know Lieutenant Governor was at our MBR plant. It is most technologically advanced at that time. I've drinking that water straight out of the pipe. Anything is possible. You're welcome to come to the Upper Sioux. We would be more than gracious hosts, probably feed you a meal and give you a tour at any time of our facility. We're very proud that it's, you know, doesn't impact our river system negatively, yet it addresses our needs for our community. Mitake Happy, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to now introduce Jim Nichols. Mr. Nichols served as Lincoln County Commissioner, a Minnesota State Senator, and Minnesota Commissioner of Agriculture. He's a farmer in Lincoln County.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this okay? And thank you. It's so good to see a lot of people that I know here, farmer neighbors, and I'm here to talk to you as a farmer. And first, I want to say, and the governor knows this, and Dave knows this, because you've done a lot of work on this, Dave. We just had to close this last month one of our major wells in the Lincoln Pipestone Rural Water System, and I'm one of the original members. And it's such a success story. It serves 10 counties, over 4,000 farms, 31 towns, and 60,000 people get some water from Lincoln Pipestone. We had to close that well because of high nitrate levels. And it's just, this goes on. Water has become such a precious thing, and I want to talk to you as a farmer about that. First of all, as a farmer, I just want, and I have a handout, but I ran out of them quickly, and you can see that I'm not too good on the computer. They did that PowerPoint for me. It's my only slide, so. But what has been good to me is last year I had the highest yield of corn in the state of Minnesota, 316 bushels an acre. The winner of the Corn Growers Contest had 288. And I wasn't out there with any special strips. I just was out combining, and they showed up. It's an independent third-party company, a seed company, and wanted to know what I was doing. I said, well, get in the combine with me, and we'll measure off some acres and dump it in your weigh wagon. So to get 316 bushels an acre, and as many of you know, I farm at Lake Benton, out on the top of the Buffalo Ridge. I don't like to say my hand is hilly, so I say it's rolling. And I don't have any rocks, but there's some hard clods of dirt out there. And I need some help picking them, by the way. I got to do better. So it's not the best land, but you know, one of my big fields averaged over 290 bushels an acre. It's an incredible yield, and I had a very good year last year. Unfortunately, I had a bunch of corn contracted now. It's $2.86 in Marshall right now, and $8.60 for beans. I mean, it's not looking good. So we need to change a little bit the way we farm, and that's my plea to you. So that was my yield. It was incredible, and I'll tell you how I got it. And a lot of you that know me know that I'm not a great farmer, so probably blind luck, but I do it every year. So this slide that you see up there, here's the real key, and this is my plea to you as farmer neighbors. Our corn uses, and you know this already anyhow, but we don't put on our fertilizer right, and I didn't either. I've only been doing this for about a dozen years. My yields weren't that good back then. But corn needs, as you can see, 75% of the nitrogen in a 21-day period. And the problem is if you put your corn on in October, it ain't going to be there in July when you need it. So I put 100 pounds of nitrogen on when my corn is waist high. And that does probably more than anything for me in my yield. I also use strip till, so I put the fertilizer on in the spring 6 inches deep, and I plant the corn right on top of it, and then I put on 1034-0, my starter fertilizer. So that's really the key, is to put your fertilizer on the right time. I mean, that's how I got the yield, and you'll get it too, and it's not hard to do. So my plea to you is don't do it in the fall, because it's costing you a lot of money. If you put on 200 acres in the fall, 100 acres is going to leach away into the water. Let's be honest here. Nitrate, corn, or nitrogen turns immediately to nitrate when you put it on the soil. Nitrate loves water, and water loves nitrate. So it bonds with the water, and as the water seeps away, it takes the nitrate with it. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is photosynthesis. Corn needs nitrogen at this key time because it takes the nitrate up into the plant, and it turns that nitrate into protein, and it's in the leaves, and that's another handout that I got there which shows you the upright leaves are better than the others. So you need a lot of sunlight, and it's photosynthesis. That's how we grow corn. Corn is 46% carbon. So you're just growing carbon. Where does that carbon come from? It comes from carbon dioxide. Corn can't use the carbon in your soil because it's inert. You need that carbon to hold your water and fertilizer, but you've got to suck out 8 tons of carbon dioxide out of every acre, because that's what we consume as corn farmers, 8 tons. If we grow 100 million acres of corn, that's 800 million tons. We're the best thing that ever happened to the environment. Think about that. Take 800 million tons out of the environment. But you need to use that carbon dioxide if you're going to get a good yield. There's no other way to get it. Because corn literally comes from carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. So that's the whole key here, folks. You've got to have that nitrogen on at the right time, so it takes up that nitrate in that period from when it's just at V10 stage, just starting to set the ear, till it's tasseled and the ear is filled. And I get some nice big ears, believe me, because of the carbon dioxide from the air. So my plea to you is put your fertilizer on in the spring. Don't do it in the fall. And there's no way to sugarcoat this. That's the dumbest damn thing you can ever do. It really is, because you're going to lose half your nitrogen. And it sure as hell ain't going to be there in July when you need it. So put it on when you need it, and you'll get a yield. And I'm not a great farmer, but I get the yield. So do that. Now the other thing is that I don't do fall tillage. And to be honest with you, I wasn't good enough to get all my work done, so I didn't get enough fall tillage done. And every year, what I tilled in the spring without fall would be 20 bushels ahead of everything else. So I just kept leaving more because, geez, the yield was there. And so it's a combination of several things. If you don't do fall tillage, once again, the dumbest thing you can ever do is go out there with that chisel plow and chisel that soybean field. Put it on in a strip and put the fertilizer under that seed of corn. Don't go in the fall. I tell my neighbors, for God's sakes, when you get the corn combined, shut the combine off and go to Florida. Get out of here, because you can't stand it when you're here if it's sunny, and I did the same thing. Sunny day, you got to get out there and rip up the soil. It's the worst thing you can ever do. It's just hurting your yield so much, and of course, that's how we have erosion. So with that, and I know I'm out of time, I'd like to, a good friend of mine is a farmer in North Dakota, Gabe Brown, and I know some of you saw conservation. John, you've probably been at his farm or whatever. His farm is so good. He gets 140 bushel corn off 11 inches of rain. But up there, once in a while in North Dakota, if they get a rain, it's a hell of a rain. So his farm absorbed 13 inches of rain in 24 hours because of the organic matter. And I know you guys soil test just like me. My organic matter is 5 or better. And unfortunately, a lot of farms are down around 2. You can't hold the water. Black soil, I call it the black desert, because it can't hold water and it can't hold fertilizer. You got to have the organic matter. Now, because you don't do a lot of tillage, your farm ain't going to be quite as pretty as it looks everybody else who's out there and ripped it up and he's got that black soil. That's the black desert. So my farm ain't as pretty, but come about this time of the year, well, I had a bad windstorm, but it starts to look really good, and at harvest time, it really is something. And I don't have any fancy machinery or yield monitor or anything, but thank God I got an old 1680 rotary, and it's got a 300 bushel grain tank on it. You can't imagine what it's like to combine 300 bushel corn. You don't go anywhere and that grain tank's full. It's just incredible. And I would never go out there with a grain. I have a grain cart. We all do. But it sure as hell ain't out in my field because it's packing the soil. Those grain carts weigh over 100,000 pounds when they're loaded. I never have compaction, so there's no reason for me to chisel plow. And I'm very careful that I'm always in the same, this slide here, I grow strips, and it isn't all this way of corn and soybeans. And the reason is you got 6 rows of corn and 6 rows of soybeans. You got to capture that sunlight. So that corn on the edge of the soybeans, and I test it all the time, it'll be 340 bushels where it gets the sunlight. Absolutely. Now in the middle of the 6 rows, I'm down around 220 or 240, and to me that's a disaster. I might as well sell the farm at that kind of production. So you need to capture the sunlight, but more importantly, I would never drive on a row. You're only ever in the same place. You're between the rows, and you rotate corn and soybeans. And if you don't want to do that, for God's sakes, when you go out this fall, don't do it, because you all do it. You go out in that soybean field that you just combined, and it's beautiful, nice, clear, looks pretty. Leave it there. And don't worry about too much tillage. I only tilled the ground once. And go out there in the spring, strip till it. You're working at one time, planting your corn and the seed in that strip, and you're not going to have erosion, and you're going to get a hell of a yield. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our speakers. We're going to move into the discussion phase of the evening now. And anyone who's standing, please take a seat. It's ideal if you have about 4 to 6 people at your table, so if you're a little short, recruit people to your table or join up with others. We really want to hear what you all have to say tonight, and working in these small groups provides an opportunity for everybody to participate and everybody to have a chance to have a voice. This approach is based on the assumptions that the knowledge and wisdom that we need to move forward to reach that 25% improvement goal by 2025, that knowledge and wisdom is here in this room with us tonight. The second assumption is that we can figure out a way forward by respecting each other, listening to each other, and looking for common themes and questions that we all have. How the evening will go is that you're going to be asked to respond to 3 different questions. You'll have about 20 minutes to discuss each of these questions at your table. Near the end of the 20 minutes, I'll let you know that we're getting close, and you'll enter your answers into the website Pigeonhole. And only one person per table is going to enter for that whole table. Throughout the evening, if anybody has any troubles with Pigeonhole, you'll just raise your hand. I'll show you a slide of what it looks like in a moment. The fun and real strength of how this process will go is that after your first 20-minute conversation, everybody moves to a different table, and you get to hear a little bit from those other conversations that people are coming from, and that way we can cross-pollinate and share the different ideas. And you'll also hopefully get to meet some new folks that maybe you haven't met before who might have some experiences that you can learn from, and you can share with them about your own. We're going to take what you say here tonight, and we're taking it very, very seriously. And from it, we want to set goals for this region of the state, and we want to hear ideas for how we move forward, thinking about what the next steps should be for moving forward to reach those goals. So just a little bit on the etiquette for this conversation that we ask everybody to be a part of. We want you to focus on what matters. We're here to talk about the future of water quality in Minnesota. We want you to contribute your thinking and experience, so we ask that everybody here participate fully and be a part of the conversation. We want to connect ideas, especially as you move from table to table. This can bring creative and productive thinking to all of us. And feel free to doodle on the paper that's at your table. So there's paper and markers there. It's a chance for you. You can draw, you can list out ideas that people have. We're not going to collect those, so feel free to do whatever you want on them. The only thing we're collecting is what you enter into Pigeonhole. So getting to this Pigeonhole, this is showing 4 different screens. The first one on the left is what it looks like when you first get there. And you need to enter in the password, which is Marshall, where we are tonight. The second one and the third one are just this tutorial that it puts you through the first time that you go into Pigeonhole, and you just click your way through. You don't need to worry about that. We've done this a couple of times already. We've done it with about 500 people, and it's worked out. So don't worry, it's going to work out, and if you have questions, just raise your hand. And then the final screen is what it looks like when you get to the questions. It shows you the questions, and you can put in your answers. So before we start with a question, I want you to turn over your agenda, and on the back of it there are some example goals. So these are just examples of the types of goal statements that might be of interest to you. And they're written as kind of a vision, so things that you might want to increase in Minnesota, in this region of Minnesota, things you might want to decrease, things you might want to maintain. They're focused on outcomes that are broad, that a lot of actions could be used to get to. So these are just to help you thinking about designing those goal statements. So the first question we're asking is, what goals could be established to improve water quality by 25% in southwestern Minnesota by 2025? And we're going to have you enter in for your table your top 3 answers. So please get started. Thank you all so much. Where are you from? Marshall. Okay, great. Did you check in with our friend first? Nope. Will you not? Yeah, I did. Oh, I talked. Yeah. I didn't know. No, I talked. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. No problem.
legislative day when we met in the governor's whatever.
Was there like a whole lot of people at this
Yeah,
giant,
we had basically had, you know, the area representative and then one employee from all that when we talked about things. I was just wondering, I seen you took a picture. Do you think you could take a picture of our table? And if so, could you send it to me?
Do you want me to take another one?
Well,
Do you have my contact?
I don't know if I do. I was wondering if I could just, I was just wondering if I could just hand you mine or. Okay. No, I get that. No, I get that 100%. I wrote everything down for you. Did you want to take it just in case? Does that make sense? See, when I was when I seen you, I was thinking, thanks. And then I seen you doing this, and I was thinking, it'd be really good for our district office if we could have the three. So, no, I will. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that you begin now to identify your top 3 goal statements that you want to put into Pigeonhole and begin to enter those in. You have 5 minutes left to get your ideas entered into the website. Thank you. everybody. That's the signal that we're going to go on to the next question. So, if everybody, please. So the second question that we're going to ask you to discuss tonight is up here. What actions are needed to get to these goals for Southwestern Minnesota? So I'm asking you all now to get up and move tables. One or two of you can stay at your table. Go to different tables. Don't travel as a pack. Mix with everybody. At your next table, introduce yourself. Share a little bit about what you talked about at the last one. This is just a reminder that you have 5 minutes now to enter your answers into Pigeonhole. So please decide what your top 3 action ideas are and enter them into Pigeonhole now. Thank you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. We have one more question. So the final question that we have tonight is what specific next steps are needed to move those actions forward. So please move again to another table. One or two of you can stay. Don't move as a group. Sit with new people. Tell them a little bit about your past conversations. You're going to have about 15 minutes to discuss. If you haven't done so already, please enter your answers into Pigeonhole now. You have 5 minutes left to get your answers into there. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your willingness to come out and talk about water quality tonight. I want to close the event by inviting the Commissioner of the Department of Agriculture, Dave Fredrickson, and the Executive Director of the Board of Water and Soil Resources to come up and make some closing remarks to you. Do you want this or that?
Oh, I can use this, yeah.
I'm just going to turn it on. Sorry.
Oh, well, good evening or good night, I guess, whatever you prefer. I'm John Jaski. I'm the Executive Director of the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and our agency works, of course, through local governments who work with private landowners primarily. And so, you know, many of them are here, and hopefully many of you have given the collective us some ideas that we can take back, and Anna will tell you a little bit more about where that's headed. But as the governor said, you know, Minnesota is in a very fortunate place on this planet. You know, we're at the headwaters, right? We don't have people above us generally. I mean, we all have someone, but we don't have a large area that drains to us. We get to drain to others. You know, we have the 3 continental divides here in Minnesota, and we have an abundance of water. Even here in southwestern Minnesota, compared to a lot of places in this country and this world, we have an abundance of water. And even though we have water quality problems, and we're going to keep working on those, clearly, that's what we're here to learn more about and figure out with all of you. We have some pretty good water as well, and we got to keep it that way. So put that in combination with one more very, very important thing in this part of the state in particular, and we have some of the world's best soil. And that's going to be a precious resource, those two things together, for generations and eons to come. And we can't think that far ahead always, but once in a while we got to make sure we're looking way ahead, because this part of the planet's going to have to do a lot of things in the future, and you know, it starts with all of us. So I think about things a little bit longer than I used to, and hopefully all of us can do that too. The other thing we got great people with the will, the interest, and the commitment to work on problems. We've got great businesses, farmers, we got great universities, we got great communities, and so those things will carry us forward. I'm confident of that. Just a few things that I wrote down that I heard. I know this is a very, very little snippet of things, because we've got, you know, many other things that'll be compiled, and Ann will tell you where that's going to go next. But I heard things regarding tillage, you know, that we can revise our tillage practices to better manage that soil for both production and for water quality purposes. I heard about the soil itself. We ought not be mining our soil. We ought to be growing our soil, because it can grow. It is a living thing, and rehabbing it is possible. That's the good news. Even a damaged area can be put back, and there's ways to do that that are becoming ever more clear how important they can be. We need to restore some things too, put nature back in some places. Some marginal areas where we've got floodplains or areas that were drained out that are, you know, not the best for production. We can put back what nature once had there to hold the water, or let the water go where it once did, so it doesn't go downstream so fast. I was seeing pictures over here of the Yellow Medicine River. You know, the banks keep blowing out and keeps falling in, because there's not a way to keep some of that water held back long enough so that some of it can move through more carefully. That's going to be a really important part of what we do in those surface waters. But we can't restore everything. You know, we got a lot of ditches and tile lines and things that are going to need to be there in the agricultural areas to make that land do what it needs to do for a very long time. So, you know, what do we do about that? There are some things we can do. We can replicate what nature did with engineering and biological mechanisms to replicate what nature's going to otherwise would have done. We can build ditches that have features that replicate nature by holding some water, by treating some water, by moving the water through the system more like a creek, even though it's going to be called County Ditch 12. It can act more like a creek once did, but still moving the water out to keep that land productive. I also heard that we're going to need to continue to invest in infrastructure. You heard about, you know about some of the things that were done here to move water, the supply of water, from places that were otherwise, you know, facing a very big shortfall for their business, for their farm, for their family. And we need to keep making sure those things are there, because without it, we're not going to be able to grow like we need to. And the technology, we got to invest in that too. The universities and others Private companies are showing us that we can do more with what we already have if we find ways to apply it better. The precision of agriculture, the precision of conservation too can benefit from that. So that's what I heard. Where is Commissioner Frederickson? There he is. Come on up. There's a ramp there just built for you.
So I get no respect around here, yeah. I'm the Rodney Dangerfield of the commissioners. John mentioned that he is thinking longer about things lately, and I am also. And the reason I'm thinking longer is because I keep forgetting. So I was planning this a couple of days ago. I was at home and I was going to take a cup of coffee and put it in the microwave, and I went to the refrigerator and I put it in there. And then I thought, well, this is crazy. But then the good news is I found my car keys. So it cuts both ways. We're in farm country, and we had a great opportunity to spend with many of you an extra hour and 15 minutes today talking about nitrogen fertilizer management. The very thing that former Commissioner Nichols was talking about. We had a good opportunity to visit about that today. We got wonderful feedback. And I thank all of you for participating and giving us some really good ideas. And I want to assure you that there will be a very healthy dose of common sense in this rule as we move forward with it. We understand clearly that Minnesota can't be treated as just one state. We have to look at different soil types. We have to understand that. And so I commit to all of you that we will certainly take all of those ideas and thoughts and put them into the plan as we move forward. We're struggling. We have a problem. We all agree that we have a problem. There are two ways to fix it. We can regulate or we can educate. I would choose to educate. The nitrogen fertilizer plan does all of that. It does regulation at the end, but the regulation is something that you technically bring on yourself. What do you want to do? If you have adopted all of the BMPs on the land, that's the best you can do. And so I understand that, and that's the common sense portion that we're going to do. So I know farmers are concerned, but we're going to address that. I represent the governor on something called the Upper Mississippi River Basin Commission. It's made up of 5 states: Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And let me tell you, when I sit down at those meetings, there are 5 of us that serve on the board. Those people that live on the other end of the river, my colleagues across the United States, commissioners, directors, secretaries of agriculture, they're not telling us. For example, the commissioner of agriculture in the state of Louisiana is not saying, Frederickson, go ahead, send whatever you got down here. It's not a problem. We'll just expand our dead zone, or we'll do whatever we want with it. They're not saying that. My colleagues in Missouri are not saying, in terms of water management, send all the water you got down here. We'll just, pop the dike or break open a levee, and we'll flood thousands and thousands of acres of corn and soybean ground. They're not saying that. And so we do have an obligation. We're at the headwaters. We have an obligation in those watersheds. And so I know that you're up to the task. I just look forward to having a further discussion as we move along with this. And this is a great opportunity for all of us to come together. Thanks for being here.
So by the end of the week, we'll post a synopsis up on the website. And after we've done all of the town halls, we're going to be putting out a report that gives regional goals and the top 10 ideas from each of the regions that we've been to. So that'll come out later in the fall. If you feel that you have more to say, or there's somebody else who might want to be part of this discussion, or you want them to be part of this discussion, we have materials online for you to do community water discussions. There's a discussion guide. It's made so you can only read the first page if that's all you want. There's a more in-depth guide there if you want to do something more structured. And we invite everybody here to have their own water meetings and tell other people about it. We want to hear from everybody in Minnesota. We're listening. We're really interested in what you all have to say. Thank you so much for coming out tonight.